Hey everyone, Brian Barletta here from Sounds Profitable, and welcome to our first live streamed version of our product deep dive series. I'm really excited because we get to do this deep dive, one that we've done before that you can check out on our website, brand new and live with our guest, Dave Hanley of AdvertiseCast, part of Libsyn. Dave, welcome to the deep dive.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So, Dave, we got to do this before, and the fun of the deep dives for me has always been the on-demand nature of it because with like podcasting, having editing is great. But this is digging into new territory, trying to see who's available right now and get them some information about great
Exactly.
tools, right? And so I'm really pumped to dig into the AdvertiseCast platform. You guys were acquired by Libsyn, and you've expanded the tool even more so. And
hmm
today we're going to talk about it from the podcaster side, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll kind of go through what the platform looks like, feature wise from the podcaster or publisher side of things, and then we'll touch on a little bit in terms of what the platform offers, from the advertiser's end in terms of self service, and then we'll talk about a couple other things just as we go through here as well that are maybe on the roadmap for the future.
Yeah. Monetization is such a major part of podcasting, right? Because it enables people to take something that's their creative execution and make it into a career, make it into a business. So I'm always
hmm
excited about more tools. And there's so many of the tools that are out there today that are great, that are locked to a specific platform. And I guess the first thing I want to ask you is like the AdvertiseCast platform, is it locked specifically to Libsyn?
It's not actually, Brian. One of the unique aspects of what we offer, and this kind of goes along with our kind of philosophy and why we exist, which is one of the things that really attracted us to Libsyn when we were looking at kind of merging the businesses, is that we always want to do what's best for the podcaster. So to that end, we're actually platform agnostic in terms of if a show is hosted on a platform that's not Libsyn, we're happy to work with them in terms of monetization, from the host red side of things, which has really been our, bread and butter since day one. And obviously there, we like the platform to be, IAB certified, just so that we're kind of selling apples to apples across different platforms. But that's really the only restriction. We're very open in that regard.
That's awesome. I think that there are so many reasons to work with a partner that is exclusive, and we can explore that. I mean, I know that AdvertiseCast does offer some relationships depending on the size of the partner. You can have like an exclusive representation deal with them. But I think that today, as a publisher, the things you need to think about is how many different places can you be in, and how can you explore what monetization option works best for you? Because the truth of it is that not everything is a perfect fit for everyone. Not everybody can manage and sell all of their own inventory. Not everybody wants to. Selling
hmm
podcast inventory might not be your bread and butter. You might be able to make amazing shows or grow amazing shows, but selling, getting in touch with the agencies and advertisers can be a lot. So, do you want to kick into the platform and see what a publisher's experience is like in AdvertiseCast?
Yeah, let's do it, Brian.
Awesome. So very cool. So we are on the main page once you've logged in as a publisher,
hmm
right?
Exactly. So this is our test system, and I've set up a little bit of kind of fun data to go through today, just to show you what the experience is like from the publisher side. And to get started, one of the things that we really aim to do with this system is, yes, it's a platform for ad buys to actually happen. So if an advertiser is looking to place ads on 1, 2, 5, 20 shows, that all flows into the system. But then what goes on after that happens is a whole other set of functionality, really classified more as like order management, because as we all know, when you get into the nuts and bolts of host read podcast advertising, that's where things can get a little bit messy. If someone's emailing around ad copy, asking for changes mid campaign, changing the schedule, that's where mistakes can occur.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we really pride ourselves in is having one place for the publisher, the podcaster to go, see what's going on at any moment, message our team. There's obviously a really great team behind the system that can help with all aspects of the campaigns, but just really trying to streamline things as much as we can with regards to this whole workflow.
Now, does that mean that there's a full order management aspect here? Like if I'm a buyer and I log in here, I'm able to execute a campaign entirely in your UI. It doesn't kick out to email. It doesn't require Google Sheets or
Correct.
anything. Okay,
Yep, correct.
that's
And
really cool.
yeah, the what we actually released initially with this platform, and this was back in 2017, was a full fully functioning self-serve marketplace where basically the advertiser or agency could go in, select the shows, place the buys, liaise directly with the shows. But what we found, especially back then, is that the industry was still pretty early on, and a lot of the buyers that came to us, maybe they found us online or got referred to us by somebody in the space. They really needed a bit more education in terms of best practices. What kind of ad copy should they put together, frequency, all those types of things that were kind of question marks.
Yeah.
And what we did then is essentially, and we kind of changed the workflow a little bit so that somebody that's coming in as an advertiser, by default, we kind of direct them to our sales and support team to really help facilitate things, because a lot of times these were first time buyers. And then once somebody gets comfortable with the platform and the workflows, then they can kind of go out on their own. And we have some agency partners today and some brand partners today, for example, that they're doing everything in the platform. And like I said, we always have our team back in the background to support, keep an eye on campaigns, jump in if we need to, but the capability to do full self-serve and work directly with the creators is there.
And so that means that as a publisher, once I get myself set up appropriately and all my information listed, I'm using your tool to facilitate communication and execution and probably like trust a little bit there.
Yep.
Between myself and the advertiser. There's not necessarily an account manager sitting in between facilitating. Like, it's not like a hamster wheel type scenario. There's actually, the whole system enables us to communicate and execute the campaign.
Yep, correct. Now, with that being said, like, our team does execute a lot of campaigns for certain brands and agencies because that's, the kind of service they want, but it's set up for full self-serve where, there's nobody in the middle facilitating it. It's just happening right through the platform.
Yeah. And to be clear there, that is you providing a service where someone on your team uses the same tool that those buyers could use anyways, but they're executing it because they want a managed service offering.
Correct.
Very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, Brian, let me jump in here and just kind of show you some of the publisher features behind the scenes. The first thing to note, and again, I'm logged in as a publisher here. The first thing to note is when you actually come into the system, you have the ability to obviously, set up, maintain, update your actual listings, meaning the actual podcast that you've got listed for sale in the marketplace. You can see here that I can actually go ahead and add another podcast. So the system's set up for publishers that have one or many podcasts underneath their account.
Yeah.
So we have quite a few cases today where there's like an independent creator that has one show. And we have quite a few networks that might have, 2, 3, 10, 20 shows. And then we have the ability to set up different permissions underneath those networks so that you can kind of have some, different workflows there depending on how you want to work. We do also, as I'm going to go ahead and add a podcast here just before I do that, we do have the ability to actually do YouTube as well. As we all know, YouTube is definitely becoming a podcast consumption destination. We can kind of set those up in two ways today. We have some creators who are strictly YouTube, and then we have some that are what we call simulcast, where it's a combination of both, podcast and YouTube, and we can kind of combine that into, one reach there. So let me just go actually grab here, just on my other screen. I'm just going to copy an RSS feed, so I don't have to type that in. And the nice thing we have here is the ability to just import the RSS feed to bring in all the pertinent information for this amazing show here. Sounds profitable. And really that pulls in obviously the cover art, description, categories, etc. And then really all I need to do here once I get set up is determine, hey, what am I actually going to sell, and kind of configure a schedule and certain things that are required from the advertising side. So for example, we can put in here downloads per episode. I'm sure this is a massive show with, hundreds of thousands of downloads. And I can now determine, my publishing frequency, episode lengths. We can also set up here, what are you actually, offering for sale?
Gotcha.
So you can have a certain number of pre-rolls, certain number of mid-rolls. And then in terms of the actual ad formats, we can support baked in, we can support DI, both on an episodic and a catalog basis. We always kind of look at each podcast individually, and this is something that a lot of a lot of podcasters will lean on us, for our expertise is to say, what's the best way to monetize this show? Because we're a strong believer that it's not like a one size fits all. Like, okay,
Completely
everybody
agree.
should be doing, dynamic full catalog, or everybody should be doing baked in. We find that different, scenarios require a different approach.
Yeah.
And we do both, both today.
Now, real
And
quick, if we can we scroll back up a second? There was an area
sure,
that said verification. I thought that was really neat because a lot of this is self-submitted data. The ad
correct.
verification up there, it says that I can submit a PDF, a document, an image of some sort, and have it verified. So this is showing from my hosting provider the downloads that I assume my IAB certified hosting provider has listed for my show, and it's
Correct.
manually reviewed by someone on your team.
Yeah. So this is the first step, Brian. When somebody submits their show, this verification goes off to the team. And we have basically a workflow in place where we review that. And oftentimes, honestly, it's not somebody saying, hey, I have 100,000 downloads and maybe they have, 1,000.
Yeah.
A lot of times it might be just misinterpretation of the data. So for example, if somebody wants to sell on a full catalog dynamic basis versus an episodic basis baked in, we may look at those reports and say, hey, I know you have 100,000 here, but based on the fact that you want to do episodic, it's probably safer to go with like an 80,000 reach. And we always want to look at being conservative there, because obviously we always want to, either achieve that number or exceed that
Yeah.
reach in terms of what the advertiser is paying for.
That's smart.
Yeah. So as I scroll down further here, I mentioned the different ad types. Let's say in this case, we're going to pick a baked in ad type. We have the ability to have different types of ad units. Things like your typical, 60-second mid-roll. We even have some custom units here like feed drops, which we've seen a lot more demand for recently, and then some custom formats if you want to offer something a little bit different.
And I want to echo
thing,
what you said, though, that, what types should you offer? I think in a marketplace scenario like this, especially as you're trying to figure out your inventory, unless there's something that you aggressively disagree with, the best opportunity you can have for yourself is to select everything and be open to it. Because this is a proposal system. I don't turn this on and magically ads are in my episode. This is the opportunity for someone to engage there. So that's really, like, I would check off all those boxes, and you're allowing so much granularity here. I mean, the mid-roll, pre-roll at 30 or 60 seconds, which I do feel have become the standard sizes. I feel like we're moving away from longer formats. People are exploring shorter formats, which is interesting, but that falls into custom ad. I love the feed drop pricing. I don't feel as an industry we have solidified that as well as we can. And what excites me about you having it here is AdvertiseCast has had a great resource for people to look into to see what the average CPMs are for your whole network, right? Like that is, or your whole marketplace. That's been a very, very powerful tool to tell people where prices are going. So I'm excited to see that expand to represent feed drops. But this is really robust. This lets you break down and show what your standard rate card is for any of these. But if I set a price here, can I make a discount or can I change it in an individual deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So in this case, let's say I'm going to put in a 60-second mid-roll. I have the ability to set up my pricing. As you can see here, we do guide in terms of where we think you should be. In this case, $25 CPM recommended. You can obviously override that if you really want to get, specific. You can make it, 25, 50 or whatever the case may be. But we always try to offer guidance. And as you mentioned, Brian, we're very transparent with, the rates. We publish those rates on a monthly basis based on actual orders executed that month, not based on, something we made up. It's literally, here's everything we sold this month and everything that ran, and this is the rate. And obviously it varies. Like we have shows that are highly in demand, B2B type audience that are $35, $40, higher. And then we have some shows that might not be, or genres that might not be as high demand. And those are, maybe in the high teens or low 20s. But it does tend to kind of hover in and around that $24, $25 range.
Now, with that price recommendation that's listed there, based on the categories I selected, will it adapt to that? Is that something that will show me what for my category is the average, or is that the AdvertiseCast average that it showed me?
So right now that's the AdvertiseCast average. That's actually a really good point. Potentially something we should look at is looking at the genre, potentially the audience, and saying, hey, based on what you've entered here, it may not be 25, it might be 22.
Gotcha.
Love that idea. I'm going to steal that one from you.
Anything that helps. I think that that's really important because
Yeah, for
exactly
sure.
what you said. I mean, sounds profitable on a CPM basis probably doesn't make sense for most people, but it's niche. It's very specific in how it
Yeah.
works. But then there are some categories that are really just flooded. And I don't think that these are bad. I think that seeing that average for that category can let you know where to start to get someone's attention, and then you can raise it. Because I do like
Oh,
that
yeah.
you have the option. You can go edit this. How often am I enabled to edit this as a publisher?
As often as you want. Yeah,
That's very
you
cool.
can edit it on the fly. We do have a process in place that actually there's like a lag. If somebody say your show grows from 100,000 an episode to 120,000, we have a lag period because we might have a bunch of proposals out there at the 100,000 before that 120 kicks in. I think it's a 30-day
Gotcha.
lag. But in terms of rates, you can edit that on the fly. And like you said, um, we do look for some flexibility in some cases. Someone wants to buy 12 episodes of the show. Well, maybe there's a bit of a volume discount. We like to offer a lot of flexibility to
Yeah.
the buyers, and frankly, that helps to get deals done for the podcaster. And as you mentioned, this is very often like a starting point. We always say, hey, start at 25. If you're getting crazy traction and we're selling out, is the rate, supply and demand, right?
I completely agree.
So that's definitely something we subscribe to.
And that lag is really attractive too. You've said all these safeguards that some people might see as not filling 100% of the inventory, but I don't think a marketplace really should be seen as that. It's sales assistance, right? There's some people who will strike it rich on this platform, right? That will be able to sell out all their inventory, and that's great. But they'll develop relationships with partners that mean sell all the available inventory, not a set amount. And that's what you want to strive for. These safeguards prevent you from overfilling or a drop in downloads. You just had a unique spike and they accidentally estimated your total numbers off of that. Make goods and refunds are not fun, right? Like that's stuff we want to avoid. So this is very protective of both sides. And for any publishers who feel like it might not fill 100%, I think that if you're growing fast enough to outpace this tool, it sounds like they have the support structure to work with you to take care of something custom.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, we have kind of different use cases. We have podcasts that are exclusively represented on the platform. Here's the only place you can buy it. And then we have a lot of shows where they might be doing it themselves. They might be working with some other partners. And this is just one source of their fill. And frankly, a lot of times those kind of the latter will evolve into the exclusive relationships once they get on the platform and they go, man, this is great. We really like how the system works, and it kind of organizes everything and helps us manage our schedule and that type of thing.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So let me just go down a little further here. I mean, you can kind of spruce up your listing here, about the host, put in a nice headshot. And then one thing that's really important is we kind of ask some pre-vetting information up here, because what we found over the years is that a lot of times advertisers are looking for specific, hey, do you have children? Do you own a home? Are you open to some of the more, questionable categories, that type of thing. So that kind of helps as like a pre-screening exercise. And then we do have the ability to put in audience demographics. So this is one of the big things that we try to get all of our podcasters to understand that we partner with is like, who is your audience?
Yeah.
Because, the advertisers, although they might think you have a great show, and they're buying your show, what they're really buying is the audience. And they need to understand, gender, age, income, education, all that stuff that's relevant to the audience that they're trying to reach.
Now, how often do you ask people to refresh that data?
Again, it's really up to the show, as up to date as we can keep it, obviously the better. But generally speaking, we set this up front, and then we do send out some reminders, ongoing to say, hey, check your reach, check your demographics, make sure everything's up to date, because that's what's really going to help us, in terms of the sales process. If that's really up to date and really current, that's a great thing.
That's awesome. I really do recommend that, because you might find that there are certain advertisers looking for people that make over 150,000 a year, and that's the most important thing for them. So having all of these things filled out where your audience leans towards will open you up to more options. You might look at it and it might not be favorable discoverable. You might be doing really well with the under 18 crowd just for Roblox, and we might have to talk about how we monetize that. But being transparent about that is going to lead towards longer relationships with these brands and with AdvertiseCast. And I also love that you have percentage audience by country at the bottom. As podcasting is such a powerful thing worldwide, it is really important to identify that, yeah, maybe you have 100,000 downloads a month, but what percent is of the US population, right? Like that is really, really important.
Yeah, exactly. And especially as the space has evolved, like early days, it was really important to understand this, because if someone's doing a baked in ad, they'd like to know, is 98% of the audience in the US or North America, or is it 60%? Now, obviously, with the advent of dynamic insertion, we can do geo-targeted campaigns if somebody only wants US or only wants US and Canada and doesn't want anything else. But it's just really important for us to understand that, who the audience is, where they're located.
Speaking on that topic, would you feel that the advertisers more interested in podcasting are starting to think more globally, or at least further than the US? Like, has that sentiment changed towards buying globally, or are you coming across more global advertisers?
I think it really depends. I mean, we definitely have some more globally focused advertisers. You can think of things like, online services, things that are not geographically bound. I mean, for our purposes, as a company, we're definitely thinking, internationally. As you know, Brian, we just announced an acquisition of a company in Germany called Julep, which is basically the AdvertiseCast of Germany. And so just a really great, addition for us to expand into Germany and other parts of Europe. So
I think that's really smart, and I really like that mindset. I mean, yeah, look, a U.S. gambling company is not going to want any inventory outside of the U.S. in any capacity, but there are a lot of online services, and knowing that that's a priority for AdvertiseCast is very helpful. There are so many podcasters I come across that are just doing so well download wise, but when you break it down by country, they might only have 60 or 70% in the US, and they're not quite sure what to do with the rest. So knowing that that can be an area where you guys can help them explore makes this a really cool solution.
Yeah. So yeah, let me just scroll back up to the top here, and obviously that's setting up your podcast.
Love it.
And then, as I mentioned, once that gets set up and submitted, that goes off to our team for an approval process. We might ask some questions, dig in a little bit in terms of the numbers and whatnot. The other thing you can have here is, as you see what's going on with each of your podcasts, you can export an order history. That's useful if somebody wants to use that for their own kind of internal accounting. And obviously the screen gets a lot more interesting if it's a network with 12 different shows or something of that nature.
Now, you handle the finance aspect there, so the buyer pays you and you pay out to the publisher?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's very cool too. So a small team who's not prepared to sign all those contracts or really facilitate that many relationships with different advertisers gets the benefit of that too.
Yeah, exactly. And we can do some more, kind of advanced things at the network level. So for example, as an individual podcaster, this is pretty easy. I can set it up and go and say, hey, here's my account. I might want to have a certain payout, in this case, I'm getting paid out via this fake PayPal account. But in other cases, I may have a network, and I can set up individual different payout methods for each show. So we can facilitate that as well to make life a little bit easier from the network admin side of things.
That is really great. I think people, as we're exploring programmatic, as we're exploring things around second seat sellers and other relationships like this, it's very easy to look at the total CPM that you get if you sold direct and disregard the cost of the salesperson, the account management, the reporting, the finance, the bill, like the billing contract aspects. And just say, oh, it's a lower CPM with these tools, but like, finance, as someone who had to learn that 2 years ago, how to bill and work with these companies, there are contracts I have out there that are just going to sit for a while because they have to go through legal. AdvertiseCast has worked to set up these relationships, these billing relationships with the buyer before they even start, and they have a payment relationship with you immediately. So those terms are clear, both sides are handled, and it's one relationship versus multiple.
Exactly. And I think, Brian, that's one of the reasons why we've been successful. Early days, we were kind of specializing in the, kind of small to mid-sized podcasts. And obviously since then we've gone upstream and we have shows of all different, shapes and sizes. But early days, we did really well because when we're selling to a brand or an agency, if they were going to go direct to an individual show that has, 15,000 downloads per episode, they're going to scratch their head and go, does this make sense? Like from an effort perspective. But when we send them an order and there's, 17 of those on the same order, it's one invoice, it's one order, it's one payment to make. And so we have had really good success kind of aggregating a lot of those together with our relationships and moving a lot of that inventory.
Yeah, we can't understate the value there. I mean, like I said, CPMs, direct sales, don't take into account any of your personnel, any of your hours and your costs. Like, it's just a number that stands alone. These services take so much off your plate. They can even help you hold some of the hires that you were going to make in certain categories to prioritize other ones to get this stuff done. So big fan of the value that these solutions provide.
For sure. So as I mentioned before, one of the big things here is really putting everything in one place for the publisher. Just as an example, quite often when you're talking to a podcaster and asking, what availability do you have? You get a spreadsheet or you get a Word doc or some online tool. We actually have within the system the ability for that show to set up and manage that schedule. So you can see here as an example, this one has been set up as, they publish on Mondays, and essentially the schedule is all in place here. And you can kind of look at, hey, what advertisers do we actually have, in place on this show right now? And what availability do we have? We even have the ability from the show side to go in and say, you know what, I'm actually looking to take, some time off around the holidays. I'm going to go in and actually modify the schedule here on the fly so that our sales team knows that this is no longer available on the 19th because they're going to be taking a vacation or something like that.
And it's really good to know, did you sell an ad spot on this episode outside of AdvertiseCast, third-party order? I think about this a lot. There are no tools in most hosting platforms that I've encountered that allow me to identify a baked-in ad in any of my reporting, right? Like, so when I am setting up an ad campaign, it's only focused on what is going to serve, how it's going to serve in the future of it. If it's in the audio file, even if I know about it, I have to maintain another database of this. So this could be really neat for managing all of your orders, whether they're sold direct or through advertising.
Yep, exactly. And this is really a feature for, obviously, if it is exclusive with us, we've got a full calendar here. The reason why we have this button here is that if a show is just using AdvertiseCast to get 20, 30, 40% of their inventory sold, and they have stuff they're selling internally or with other partners, then they can use this to manage their entire schedule by basically marking off, hey, I don't have 3 spots available anymore, I've only got 2 because I already sold one of these to one of my direct brands.
Love it.
Yeah, so there's the schedule just kind of in a nutshell. Obviously you can expand that and look at different orders and different views here. You even have the ability to export the availability. So very often a buyer will say, hey, what do you have coming up in Q4? Instead of literally typing out all these dates again, you just hit export and it puts it into a little Excel sheet. So try to keep things really, really simple. And then the next thing I'm going to show here is what we call the dashboard. And this is literally, kind of the heart of the workflow in here for the podcaster. And we kind of break everything into specific sections. So at the top, we get a little bar here showing, hey, what do you have pending approval? What's in progress in terms of like dollars? Again, if you have multiple shows, that you'll have the ability to break these out and kind of filter them here. In this case, it's simple. There's just one show.
Yeah.
And then I've got a bunch of things that I need to do. So first, I have some new orders that have come in that I can review or approve. In this case, I've got an order from Tomato King and Undies, a lot of our nice fake advertisers here in the test system. And I can go in and I can simply click on this to review the order. And as you mentioned, Brian, the nature of this platform is that it's not like you sign up and boom, you get ads in your show. All these are host read ads. All of these are essentially opt-in, where you get it, you review, and you say, not for me, I'm going to decline that. Or you get it and you review it and you love it. Hey, here you go. I'm going to take this. I'm going to approve it, and I'm even going to put a message in here and say, thanks. This is my favorite. My favorite brand. I'm going to go ahead and approve that.
Now, if I work with a brand really well and I want to auto approve them, do I have the option to do that for the future, or do I still have to set each one as approved?
We still have to approve those because the case could happen where you love the brand, but maybe you're just out of inventory at that point, right? So you need to approve it not only for the purposes of like of wanting to work with them, but also just like placements and whatnot. Now, keep in mind, if you get one and they say, hey, I want to place this ad on December 12th, you can go back in and send a message saying, hey, can we change this here to December 17th or something like that, if you're going to tweak the schedule. And this is really the messaging back and forth here, and communicating either with our team if we're the ones managing the order, or directly with the advertiser if they're the one that's managing this order.
And the company will make that clear. Like in this example, obviously a test, but it says company AdvertiseCast when you scroll down a little bit there. Will that help me understand if I'm dealing with Tomato Can directly or
exactly?
Okay, that's really cool to know.
And there actually is another step within the dashboard. I don't have any showing in this dashboard example here, but there's actually another one up top, which is what we quite often do, really for advertiser experience, because what's not a great buyer experience is you get a list of shows, you love all 10 of them, you say, let's do this, and then it comes back later on after you've written the order and saying, well, these 4 are not available, or they don't want to work with you, or whatever the case is. So we actually quite often pre-vet the brands before they even make it to order, just to make sure that we're not going to have that kind of wrinkle in the process. So there's another one up here where it's like, hey, we have this client, they're interested potentially, are you in or are you out? And it's literally just like a check or X as to whether you're interested in working with that brand. Below that, we're going to show you any upcoming ads you have. So in this case, in the schedule, we've got, in this case, one on October 17th. If you had a full schedule built out, you're going to see, where those all fall into the schedule itself. And then down below here, we actually have the next process is, once you've actually run the ad, we want you to mark it published. Now, in this test system, we actually don't have this capability hooked up. This is something that we did right from day one, where you'd publish the episode, you'd kind of drag the little tool and say, yeah, it's right here, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. And that's where you'd actually set the air check. Today, we actually have an integration where the system will transcribe the episode, find the air check, pop it in here. And this process is not something that needs to be done manual anymore, of course, unless there's an issue and the AI can't find it, or can't locate the ad. And maybe it's a problem. Maybe they forgot to do the ad, or maybe it's just that the AI tool couldn't find it. So that's a really slick workflow now that takes that out of the equation. And that's been a really great addition to the platform to kind of keep things moving.
Can the advertiser get access to the creative before it's put live? Like, can they ask for it to be recorded and then approve on it? Or is this flow basically one way? They send over the information and their bullet points or their specific script. If it's accepted, the assumption is that they hit all of that, and then that AI tool transcribing it and identifying it confirms that it was in line with the expectations or not. Or can I ask them to send me the audio first if I'm a buyer?
Yeah, in the case of dynamically inserted ads, we do allow the advertiser to kind of preview that up front.
Very cool.
In the case of baked ins, it's kind of hard to do because what we don't want is the host to have to go back and edit their whole episode. So, but what we do certainly encourage is, hey, if I have a campaign here, it's 4 spots over the course of 2 months. Like, definitely provide some feedback and say, hey, we loved what you did here. Maybe next time you could add, A, B, and C, or tweak this a little bit, and kind of that constant feedback and communication to continue to improve, throughout the campaign.
Yeah. And I got to say, dashboards are the hardest thing to crack. I mean, in my experience as a product manager, I think that 9 out of 10 dashboards that I worked on were not as effective as we had hoped they are. But this is incredibly streamlined because it says, where do you stand to make money? What's on track to make money? And where are you actively making money, right? Like, those are the 3 categories, right? Before it's like pending, in progress, and live, right? Like, or those 3 staging areas are really powerful, and it's all laid out incredibly well. The fact that you can filter it by your individual shows or the subsets of the network is really smart too. But if somebody logs in here, they know exactly what they need to do to make sure that they're earning all of the money possibly being offered to them.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll see kind of the last stage in this workflow here is you've run the ad, It's been 30 days. That's generally the period over which we're selling, on based on the number of impressions or downloads. And we need to go ahead and report the reach on this.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see here, it even says, this is the last step before you get paid, right? And now the one thing we are doing right now, which is something that's in progress, is the ability on certain platforms to essentially, automatically pull those download figures.
That's great.
And kind of nix that reporting step as well. Because that's something like, as a podcast, we have to go into your hosting, take a look. Okay, I said 30,000. Okay, good news, 32,108. Type in that number. And again, we have some, verification behind the scenes if we need to kind of dig into that in some cases, but this will be a great thing to automate so that kind of goes away.
Yeah. I think that automation adds a lot of confidence.
Sure. And so we talked about the dashboard, the podcast area, and the schedule. Lastly, one of the areas that, of course, everybody is excited about is the payouts. So as you can imagine, this is a key area for anybody that's working in our platform to see, when am I going to get paid, right? So in this case, you can not only see some of the stats in terms of like what I've made over time, what's pending to get paid. We also have the ability here to, again, export payments. As you can imagine, we have shows that have been working with us for 3, 4, 5 years. This can be a very long list of payments. So being able to bring that into Excel and use it for your bookkeeping is a great feature. We do have the ability here, if somebody's looking at this and going, in this case, like for example, this is our test system. So, hey, this was supposed to get paid in June. It's like, hey, how come it doesn't get paid? They can go in here and, click on this and actually inquire. That goes right to our billing team, and they can get back to them and say, hey, here's the status of that payment. So it's just kind of that last, little feature in terms of interacting with our team. And, we always say the technology is great, but it's also, we've got a really great team behind the scenes to help out in case something, needs a little bit more digging.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think that's the truth of ad tech. It's a tool to help make things easier. And while you can do a lot of it your own, sometimes you do need that support. So having that clear line, right? This is laid out very clearly. If I have questions about how I'm getting paid or why I'm not being paid, that was very straightforward there.
Yeah. So let me, as I mentioned before, Brian, let me just I have the ability in this system to kind of jump in and out of different accounts. I'm just going to jump into an advertiser account and just kind of show you on the flip side, in a few seconds here. It definitely mirrors, a lot of what you've seen here, because obviously it's just kind of the reverse view of what's going on the publisher side. From an advertiser perspective, I have a different dashboard. Instead of, my ads that I'm going to run as a publisher, I can go ahead on the advertiser side and take a look at my dashboard in terms of what shows am I running on, what's the status of those campaigns. For example, if I've got this campaign that's running, I can click on this and come in and directly message, the podcaster and say, great. Mike's blocking my keyboard here. Great read on the last one. Provide some great feedback, or ask some questions, see if they can tweak a couple things, and really interact directly with the show. And our team uses the exact same messaging functionality. You get an email every time there's a message that comes through. You have the ability to attach documents, updated ad copy, all that type of thing flows right through the system here. The other thing you can do as the advertiser, obviously, is you can either go ahead and listen to your air checks right in here in the order itself, or you actually have a specific air checks area where you can kind of see everything on a consolidated basis and just go and click and listen through all these great ads that were done for your brand.
And they stay up there as they're in the live category, basically until it's paid, I assume.
I mean, they'll stay up here for, forever. I don't think we ever removed those, just for tracking purposes, auditing purposes. If anybody, is ever in here and they say, hey, we had a great read from, Dr. Phil, let me pass that along just so as an example to, somebody else who might be doing a campaign with us. So those are always accessible there.
That's awesome.
Same thing in here, just kind of the flip side. You can go in and see, campaigns, bookings, invoices, all that good stuff pertaining to the advertiser. But I think what's really key in here is that we have the ability as an advertiser to basically go in and they can, browse the inventory. They can see here that, on the Newsworthy podcast, they have, certain reach, certain rates. They can kind of read more about it, check out the demographics. If they want to play some sample audio from the show or sample ad reads, they can go ahead and do that as well. And we kind of have two different setups for advertiser accounts. We have kind of a limited functionality where they can go in here and say, hey, I'm going to contact my sales rep, just put in my information and say, hey, I'm interested in Newsworthy. And that goes off to their sales rep. And we can open up this functionality as well, where they can literally have full buying capabilities, all rates, all shows, go ahead and just do their thing. And again, we generally like to kind of take somebody along the path until they say, yep, I'm ready to go ahead and do this on my own. And, we kind of onboard them appropriately so that they're successful in using the system.
I think that's critical too, because that's protective of the publisher. You need to vet the advertiser, the buyer first, to make sure that they are legitimate as well. You're validating both sides. So requiring them to talk to somebody to participate in the first buy and maybe even the second one, and then move them towards kind of a self-service model while that you've identified that they're the right fit, protects somebody from going in there saying, I want to buy one spot from every single show and then not following up. I mean, even if I just got that request and they just rejected it, like that still isn't the behavior you want on the platform. So it's easy to say that this tool, the open aspect of it is, submit for a demo style. But the truth is you're very comfortable with giving kind of the steering wheel over the second that they've proven that that's what they want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I think the last piece here is, obviously in this test system, I only have, 15 different shows. In our live system, we have thousands. So that can be an area where somebody who's coming in can get a little bit overwhelmed. So we try to provide some really great features where, somebody might come in here and say, I want to search for business and see what shows we have for business, right? So just do a quick search. Or they can go in and say, you know what, we buy a lot of inventory from the platform. Let's see what's new in the last 30 days. Actually, I don't think anything's new in the last 30 days. How about the last 90 days? And it'll kind of filter down.
This is a test environment.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that I think that's great. And that's using all that data, because I've set how frequently I'm updating the episodes. I've given you the RSS feed. I've given you all my information. So that's showing you when my account was created, showing you when there's new episode drops, more information in there. I like those filter options. I think that's really smart.
Yeah. And we're constantly tweaking these, because oftentimes we're getting feedback from people like just yesterday, literally. As I mentioned, the feed drops is something that's definitely becoming more and more in demand. I think one of the reasons is that we have a lot of podcasters and publishers that are more like on the independent side. So they're very open to saying, hey, I'll promote a show from maybe a large network that I think my audience might be interested in. So we're getting a lot of those requests coming in. So we have now the ad unit specifically for feed drops, and adding that as a filter was actually requesting, hey, let me see all the shows that actually have a feed drop available to purchase. And when being able to filter that out and place a buy with those shows.
When you add a new feature like that, do you contact all your publishers and let them know about it so that they can add it to their options?
Yeah, we keep people up to date in terms of just like, we send out a blast email to everybody saying, hey, here's some new features you might be interested in. Oftentimes also our team, when they're just kind of talking to a publisher, we actually have a team of probably, I think it's like 7 or 8 people now that are just focused on dealing with the publishers, making their experience as good as it can be. And oftentimes they'll say, hey, you've done a few feed drops. How about adding an ad unit in there and put your pricing up, and just kind of help them navigate everything.
Very cool. This is great.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to dig into in the UI?
Yeah, I mean, not really, Brian. I think obviously we didn't get into all the, all the dark corners of the system. As I mentioned, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes for our team and like kind of like power users. That's not really relevant to today's, discussion. But I think the last piece is just around, we have just recently launched our Libsyn programmatic offering. Yeah. We call Libsyn auto ads. That's something that we're definitely seeing a lot of uptake from the podcasters that we work with. A lot of it is in terms of, hey, maybe I'm not to the point where I'm ready to take on host read ads, as that becomes the method for monetization. But even more so, the case is somebody says, hey, got my host read ads, let's be honest, there's very few shows that ever sell out 100% of their host read ads.
Yeah.
That's an anomaly. So using that as a backfill is another great use case for that. And that's something that we just launched a few months ago, and we're really seeing some good traction on that front too.
Yeah. That's great. I think programmatic adds such an extra layer for people there. I think that in all scales of it, right? Programmatic is a way to fill all of your inventory and work with multiple partners and give them a taste of it, because it's an entryway for a lot of buyers. I want to try audio. I want to try podcasting. I want to dabble in 1,000 shows, and then I find 100 that work, and then I find 10 I want to do host reads with. It's such a powerful thing right there. I think that's awesome that that's something that you're offering. And the fact that between Libsyn and AdvertiseCast, there are some synergies there, it's really exciting to watch.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So we have some questions. This has been really cool because we're able to live stream on Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. I do want to mention something really cool. So Elsie from the Libsyn team is going to be doing a Twitter Spaces recap of this deep dive on October 14th at 11 a.m. Eastern time, and we'll make sure to share a link out to that. But we do have some questions that I do want to dig into a little bit here. We said feed drop, and I think we kind of jumped over that a little bit. I think that that's bad on me as well for not explaining it. So Dave, do you want to take explaining a feed drop?
Yeah, sure. So really what this stemmed from is a lot of ads now that happen on podcasts are to promote other podcasts, right? And many of us have heard for years, maybe a pre-roll or a mid-roll or even a post-roll ad where someone says, hey, everybody, thanks for joining us today on our great episode. You'd love this podcast called Sounds Profitable. Check it out. Here's what it's all about, et cetera, et cetera. And what some very savvy marketers have kind of come up with over the last maybe couple of years is this concept that instead of doing just that host read ad for a podcast, a new format is basically in my RSS feed. I'm going to have typically an intro as the host saying, hey, everybody, today we have a special treat for you. We've got either an excerpt or a full episode from this great podcast called Sounds Profitable. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. And just stay tuned here, and we're going to play, some of Brian's great show. And then literally it's an episode or a piece of an episode in my feed that essentially aims to, introduce people to Brian's show and drive them over to become subscribers. And I think it's been really effective, which is why people are really gravitating towards it. Me personally, I've heard a couple of feed drops and I go, that show sounds pretty good. I'm going to go check that one out and maybe subscribe and listen to a few more. Now the like you said, the pricing is still a little bit kind of up in the air. Like what should people be charging for feed drops? And frankly, it's kind of up to the podcaster. And it's not for everybody. I've seen shows where if you have a daily show, for example, every day, 7 days a week, like, do you really want to drop another episode of somebody else's podcast in that feed on the same day as one of your episodes? It's probably more suitable for a less frequent show. And the CPMs we've seen on them are anywhere from, 40 to triple digit rates. And it really is up to the individual show.
Gotcha. That's good to know. We did one. I use it for when there's a show, when we want to take a break, or there's a show that I'm really passionate about and sounds profitable, to say like, absolutely, I love this show and I really want you to go experience it. I think we did it with Midnight Burger once with their advertising episode. They had a whole like a narrated article, an audio drama episode about ads, and it was very funny. And then Shameless Acquisition Target, another one that's valuable for the industry. It was fun because it gave me a week off, and it also gave people a piece of content to listen that I said I enjoy, and because you listen to me, I think you'll like this.
No, that's a great idea. I mean, if someone's dying to take a week off, it's better to put maybe another episode in your feed and give people something to listen to. And make a little extra money in the process.
We got 2 questions about the size of podcasts that can work with AdvertiseCast. Is there like a minimum downloads per episode per month, or how do you quantify how big you have to be to work with AdvertiseCast?
So what we've really seen is that the number at which a show becomes interesting for an individual podcast, host read, ad placement is around the 10,000 mark. And that can either be 10,000 downloads per episode or 10,000 impressions in a dynamic, block. And that could be run over, a week or a month or whatever the case may be. We definitely are experimenting with the concept of kind of bundling together shows to give them kind of an avenue for host-read ads and just kind of getting their feet wet. But what we've really seen is that for shows that are kind of underneath that threshold, the auto ads, kind of programmatic route is definitely the way to go to generate, some real revenue. And then you may get the odd, host-read opportunity, but it's really probably more suitable for the auto ads route below 10,000.
That's not a bad thing. That means that you have an offering for everybody, and the fact that you want to explore it. I mean, I think what I'm really taking this to mean is most podcasters have a path to work with you and should be talking to you as well, because if it's not a good fit today, it could be in the future. And just getting associated with that mailing list or being able to be in contact with you is really powerful.
Yeah, and we're also looking at ways where we can help monetize, but we can also help those shows develop, because we've seen many times over our over our history where a show has 7,000 downloads per episode and the thing just takes off, and if we can be a part of that early on and help in any way, like we absolutely love that, because those shows could turn into the next 70,000 or 700,000 downloads per episode shows.
Yeah, it's something that I think we skip over in podcasting, is that like there's still such a sense of community. I mean, obviously you guys are working with thousands of podcasters, but people kind of skip over the fact that it feels good at a company like what you do and what I do. If we can help monetize and help grow somebody, if we're a part of their path and their success, we want that, and we find a vested interest in helping them further
100%.
and further. So shows that start small, that we can grow, that we can find success with, are the ones that we continue to help as they get bigger and bigger. And we want that. We want to say, it sounds profitable, that AdvertiseCast, that all these companies helped build that show and enabled whatever they do in the future. So
as a prime example, I mean, even two of the shows that are on the, we're on my test system there, the Newsworthy podcast and Darknet Diaries, both of those shows came to us when Erica was on the Newsworthy and Jack on Darknet Diaries, they still had jobs, right? And they were kind of getting started, and they both have made it their full-time career. And we love that. That's what gets us up in the morning.
Yeah. Those are great shows, both great shows and great people I've had a chance to work with. The last question is, in the tool, I think we might have skipped over it a little bit quickly, but if I'm a buyer, I have the option to put in there the bullet points I want to hit or a script. Is that the added file, or is there a specific area that we didn't see from the buyer side when buying inventory and deciding what the content is going to be that they're going to run?
Yep. So when you're actually placing the buy, there's kind of two ways you can do it. You can put in your bullet points or script, whatever whatever format you want, actually in the order itself. But there's also an area to upload a file, which is frankly probably what most people do, because generally speaking, it might be a couple pages of kind of notes and talking points, and here's what we want you to do and what not to do. So that's how the ad copy gets delivered. And keep in mind, throughout the campaign, you may update that, 1, 2, 3, 10 times, depending on how long that campaign goes. And you can always go in the system, upload that new copy, and it'll get distributed out to the shows.
Yeah. I think that's an area that I'm excited to see you guys expand on, because you're able to see all these copy notes and everything that's in there, building it more into the platform, making it more of an option, and being able to see revisions and requests to changes or comparing it against the ad check or the air check. I think that's going to be really powerful. But this step here is really great too. But you're right. A lot of these things could be a 30-second ad. You could end up with 3 pages, because they need to tell you the background of the company. They need to tell you what's worked for them and hasn't worked for them before. Give you options and bullet points to dig through and types of stories. And remember, a lot of these companies, especially the direct response ones, are sending products too, so you can have a personal endorsement. So that 3 pages might be even describing how you experience the product too, to make sure that you're aligned as you talk about the ad.
Yeah, we've already dipped our toe in the water a little bit in terms of, abstracting some of that information that might normally be in that document. So for example, on every show on a campaign now, we have the ability to capture in there the specific promo code if it's a DR campaign that's being used for each show. And then our transcription and air check partner, which is PodScribe, they can actually check that against the promo code that was used in the ad to say, oh, they actually used the wrong promo code. They used the one from the last campaign. They used, Dave Pod 20 instead of Dave Pod 30, right?
Yeah.
So we actually have the ability to automatically check that, because that's something we want to know, not only from the perspective of, hey, we need to do a make good because they use the wrong promo code, but B, that's going to be reflective in terms of any, performance data, because they're not going to see that hitting that right promo code. So that's something that we've recently added, and again, continue to expand on ways to help that creative process.
That's incredibly cool. Well, Dave, this has been fantastic, and I really want to highlight to everybody here a few quick things. One, that this is an agnostic tool that AdvertiseCast can work with you wherever you are. There are benefits to working with Libsyn as well, and so you should explore both of those as a publisher. Two, if you're a tech partner in any way, it's very clear that AdvertiseCast is looking to employ the best and brightest. That relationship you just said with PodScribe, the other things that me and you have had a chance to work on there. This is a growing ecosystem, and you are focused on providing your customers with the best options possible. So reach out definitely to Dave and the team at AdvertiseCast. And finally, for buyers, this is a great solution for you to try podcast advertising in any scope. You want a specific show that they rep exclusively. You want managed service. You want to dig into it yourself, or you want to try a wider reach with programmatic. AdvertiseCast has all of those options. So please go to advertisecast.com, reach out to the team, get a direct demo, or have them run a test campaign with you, and then let me know how it is. So you can find out more about Sounds Profitable at soundsprofitable.com, and you can find out more about AdvertiseCast at advertisecast.com. And thank you again so much for joining us on our first ever live stream with our deep dives.